Hi, and welcome. My name is Susan Petracco, and I'm with Accurate Tax. We do sales tax software, and I'm here today to talk to you about how sales tax can impact your business, regardless of whether you sell physical products online or if you do digital products through your blog or other channels. Sales tax is an important part of your business and not something that we all really care to deal with, but something that we have to be in compliance with. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about what the rules are and why it matters to your business, as well as how our software or other processes can make this simpler for your business. A little bit about me. I did co-found Accurate Tax. In my professional career, I have also been a web developer, an e-commerce consultant, a retailer, and a blogger. So I think I've kind of at least dabbled in the various different kinds of activities that some of the people here in Entrepreneurs and Bloggers in the Spotlight do as well. So hopefully I have a background that kind of speaks to what you do as well. And my founding belief, whether doing development for companies or building software for use by a lot of different people, has been to provide a level of quality that can be used by both large businesses as well as small businesses. So if you're just getting started, you're a solopreneur, you're a mom and pop shop, or just not big yet, I don't want to exclude you from anything that we do. So that's kind of been the driving force behind everything that I've done in my career. Sales tax is something that on the surface seems fairly easy. You go over to Walmart or something similar and you purchase whatever you purchase and you check out at the register and they apply sales tax and you pay it and you don't like it, but you do it anyway because you have to. And you walk out the door, no big deal. However, when you're talking about online sales tax, it gets a lot more complicated. And the reason for that is the amount that you charge to your customers for sales tax depends on so many different variables. It depends on where you're located. So the rules are different in different states. So where your business is located and in the states you operate in, those are important to know. And it affects the sales tax calculated. It depends on where your customer is located. If my business, we're in Central Florida, and if I shipped products to someone in Orlando, the tax rate is probably different than if I ship the same order to customers in Miami. And being able to determine what the sales tax rate is at the address that you're shipping to is important because that determines the correct sales tax to calculate. It also depends on what kinds of items are purchased. So if you're selling physical goods or digital goods, specialty products, such as medical equipment or even clothing in the state of New York, things differ a little bit depending on the sale price and the classification of the products that you're selling. So that's another variable that goes into determining the right sales tax rate and calculation to use. Then it also depends on the current date. So many states have sales tax holidays for back to school or for weather preparedness. And if your products qualify under those rules, then you're not supposed to charge sales tax during those holidays. So if you're looking here, those are just 4 different variables. There's more, but those are the most common ones that affect the amount of sales tax that you calculate on a given order or purchase from your website. I'd like to give you a brief history of online sales tax so you know where this came from. Back in 1992, there was a lot of debate over what retailers were required to collect sales tax for. And e-commerce didn't exist back then. In fact, the internet itself was pretty new. What this really applied to was catalog retailers. So a lot of us would get catalogs in the mail. We would fill out a paper form and write a check, or we would call the number of the company and place an order from that catalog. And back then, certain states wanted to require these catalog retailers to collect sales tax on behalf of their shoppers, even if the catalog company didn't have a presence in the state in question. So I want to take a little sidetrack and explain what presence is. It's an actual term called Nexus that we use in sales tax, which literally translates as significant presence, and it means that you have, in this sense, it meant that you have a physical presence in the state. So it could be your headquarters are there, you have a satellite office there, you might have a remote salesperson there, or just an employee who works out of their house, but any of those things could create a nexus. So e-commerce was born and continued to grow through the 90s and the 2000s. And during all of this, the 1992 Quill decision, which was a Supreme Court decision, was in effect. And states couldn't make online retailers collect sales tax if they didn't have a physical presence in the state because of that Quill decision. And that's what it said. But the e-commerce grew a lot faster than catalogs did. There's a lower barrier of entry. You don't have nearly as much cost or work to open a website selling anything than you would to print a design and print a catalog and mail it out to addresses that you had collected from somewhere or purchased, and then man a phone and or a mailbox for orders coming in from those catalogs. So there were a lot more retailers, and e-commerce grew really fast in the sense that it was not only taking over mail and phone orders, but it was also taking the place of what had previously been local orders. And whenever this was done across state lines, meaning that the retailer was in one state and the customer was in another, if the retailer didn't have a presence in the state that the customer was in, they didn't have to collect sales tax. But this meant that the states were missing out on a lot of money. So there ended up being a lawsuit between the state of South Dakota and Wayfarer, which many of you have probably heard of. They sell home goods, and there were a few other retailers involved as well. And this court case ended up working its way all the way up through the courts to the Supreme Court. And in 2018, the Supreme Court passed this Wayfarer, what's colloquially called the Wayfarer Decision. And what that did really was just to overturn what had been done in 1992. It didn't establish any new sales tax laws or rates or processes. It simply said that states now could compel retailers to collect sales tax, even if those retailers did not have a physical nexus or presence in that state. We're now in 2021, and we have seen e-commerce continue to grow. And what the various states have done, and this applies to almost all states, I think there are 2 that don't have current legislation for economic nexus. And to back up, what the states have done is to create these laws. They're called economic nexus laws. And those mean that while you may not have a physical presence in a state, you have enough of an economic impact on that state to be considered having a presence, even though it's not a physical presence. So that's basically what the states are using to say, you have to collect sales tax in our state, even though you live and work elsewhere. The good news is that almost every state, there's one that doesn't, almost every state has something called a small seller exemption. I'm going to use Indiana as an example, not to pick on them, but because I like Indiana's example. They kind of do everything in a standardized way. If you are operating a store or a blog where you're selling items and you sell under $100,000 and under 200 transactions in the previous calendar year, then you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to collect sales tax from Indiana. Not only are you flying under their radar, you're legally not required to collect sales tax there. But as soon as you cross over that $100,000 amount of sales into Indiana, or 200 transactions per year, as soon as you cross either one of those, the next year you're required to start collecting sales tax from Indiana. Not because you have an office there, but because you have an economic nexus. It's a little bit of a Wild West scenario because each state has different rules. Some of them work only off of the dollar threshold. Indiana's $100,000. Some work only off of a number of transactions, and those 2 numbers vary among the different states. Also, some states use the previous calendar year, and some use the previous 365 days based on the current day. So the amount that you're looking at is different in each case. So this has given us what we like to think of as a sales tax life cycle. And what you need to do as a business is determine where you have Nexus currently. So the first thing you want to consider is where you have a physical Nexus. That would be your offices, your employees, if you have a warehouse or a drop ship location, anything like that. Or if you do trade shows, that can affect it in certain states as well. So those states you need to register and collect sales tax in. Then you need to look at all of the states' small seller exemptions and see, do you cross that threshold? Did you sell over $100,000 into Indiana last year, or whatever that number is for different states? And for each one of those states where you have either kind of nexus, you have to register to collect sales tax for them. And that process is a little bit different for each state. Once you're registered, you need to start collecting sales tax from the people who buy things from your store or your blog. And you need to calculate the right amount of sales tax, charge it to the customers. It comes in as any other money comes into your bank account, but you don't get to spend it. You have to collect that and periodically file your sales tax return and pay it to each state. So that then kind of works its way back through a cycle, because hopefully your business is growing and you're making more money. And if you do, that means that you're probably getting past those small seller exemptions in each state. And that's a great thing, but it does mean you have additional states where you have to worry about calculating and collecting sales tax. So you need to periodically look at that and determine, do I now have to collect sales tax in a new state? So all of that can be really complicated. Fortunately, there is an approach, I will call it, called Streamline Sales Tax. It's an organization whose goal is to make that easier for you. So if you want to look at this map here on the right side of the screen, there are 5 states that are very dark blue, and those are what we call the Nomad States, and it's based on the first letter of their names. And those states have no state sales tax. That leaves us, we've got 50 states. I'm going to say 51 to include District of Columbia. Take out the 5 that don't have sales tax. That leaves you with 46 states. Of those, 24, so roughly half, are members of Streamline Sales Tax. So this can take a bunch of various processes and rules and regulations from 24 states and kind of consolidate them into one. The goal of the whole organization is to make it easier for retailers to be in compliance with the sales tax laws in these various states, to reduce the burden in terms of cost and time and legal understanding of how things work. Again, on this map, the medium blue colored states and the light blue one of Tennessee are the 24 member states. The white one, Colorado, Pennsylvania, and all of the gray stripe states don't participate. So those states all have their own various processes that you still may have to comply with if you have a nexus in those states. But for the 24 that do participate, Streamline Sales Tax can help you tremendously. Within Streamline Sales Tax, they have 6 sales tax software providers, including us, Accurate Tax, who are certified service providers. And what this means is that we have software that interacts with their system. We get rates and other data from them, and periodically they give us tests that we have to run against our system and prove that our system does things the way that they say that we have to do things. So using a certified service provider gives you that knowledge that the software has been vetted by these 24 states and this organization, Streamline Sales Tax. We have been a CSP since 2011. We were one of the first ones certified, and we've been one that whole time. So we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary, and we're pretty excited about that. I'm a firm believer in Streamline Sales Tax because I think being an online seller is hard, and it doesn't need to be. If the states are working to make that easier for retailers, then that's great, and I'm behind that 100%. We're also a founding member of the National Association of CSPs, and we provide all of the benefits for using a CSP, and I'll explain those on the next screen. Of the 6 CSPs, 4 of them provide this first benefit, which is free software in most cases. So let me explain how that works a little bit. If you have a web store or a blog and you're using Accurate Tax to calculate the sales tax on each order, which is the gist of what we do, you have to pay for that based on the number of calls that you're making, which roughly relates to the number of orders in your store to taxable states, to states where you have to collect sales tax. And when you are selling into, if you are a Streamline Sales Tax seller and you're selling into an SSTP state where you don't also have a physical nexus, where you only have that economic nexus, then the calls to those states don't get rolled into the cost of using the software. They're basically free calls. We as the CSP get compensated by Streamline Sales Tax for your use of this software. And the whole point of that is so that they've got reliable software providers that you can use, but they subsidize that and the states subsidize that so that the burden is less for you, the retailer. You're not having to outlay as much cost in order to participate as a Streamline Sales Tax seller. Additionally, it simplifies the reporting and payment processes. So I talked about there being 24 member states. If you were working with each state directly, that means 24 different sales tax return forms, each one being different. It means 24 different processes for paying your sales tax. And depending on your size and the rules, you may be paying that and filing the returns monthly or quarterly or yearly. But in any case, you're managing 24 schedules, 24 reports and forms, and then 24 processes. When you use Streamline Sales Tax, you simplify that. Everybody uses the same process. It's done through the software, and that really reduces the amount of work that you have to do for something that you don't want to be doing in the first place for about half of the states that have sales tax. So it's really a nice benefit. Additionally, you get liability relief. So if there is a calculation error, the first people that they come to talk to is your certified service provider. Their goal is to involve you less, unless and until you need to be involved. In addition to liability relief, that also includes audit support. So if a state thinks you've been doing something wrong or making a mistake, and they decide to do a sales tax audit, that can really take up a lot of time for a retailer. But what they do instead is they start with us. We might still have to communicate with you, but we're kind of their first point of contact, and it shields you from a lot of that communication and reporting and so forth that has to be done for a sales tax audit. So these are a lot of nice benefits that you only get if you're using a CSP software like Accurate Tax. There are, like I said, there's 6 of us that are CSPs. 4 of us provide the free software, 2 do not. So when you're looking at doing sales tax software, one of the things that you want to ask the provider is, are they a Streamline Sales Tax certified service provider? If they're not, you're not going to get these benefits. They may still say that they support SST, and they do, but not in the same way. So it's important to be smart about that and make sure you are using a CSP if you want the CSP benefits. So at this point, hopefully you're considering that you may need something like this. And when should you start looking at becoming a Streamline Sales Tax seller? And I think that there's 3 reasons that you would use SST rather than doing it yourself. The first is if the cost for implementing software is simply too high. If you're selling into states that aren't SST states and having to collect sales tax, it doesn't really help. But if you have an economic nexus in a lot of these SST states, then it really is going to reduce the cost, either the cost that you already have if you're already using sales tax software, or if you're adding that software on, it's going to be adding it on at a lower cost than it would be if you were not an SST seller. The second reason you might want to do this is that it just takes too much time. And you're spending, rather than working on your business, you're spending a lot of time filling out forms, either paper forms or online, and writing checks and figuring out really how much you owe, looking at reports and how much goes to Indiana and how much goes to Idaho and how much goes to Florida and how much goes to Texas. If that's just taking way too much time, or you're having to pay somebody to do it, then Streamline Sales Tax is a way to simplify that among the 24 member states and really make the burden of being in compliance a lot easier. And then the third reason you might want to consider SST is that you just don't care to be a tax expert. I get it, most of us don't. If tax compliance is just something you really don't care about, you want to do it right so that you don't get in trouble, but you don't want to have to learn it all, then going with SST really just makes it easier to set it aside, not think about it, and let your CSP be the ones who worry about being in compliance and making sure everything is going smoothly. So if any of these three things, and especially if multiple of these are true, then you probably want to look at being a Streamline Sales Tax seller. I'd like to explain a little bit about what our software does. The basis of it is that it does a real-time sales tax calculation. So if you have a shopping cart and someone is placing an order on your website, and they go into the checkout process and they tell you where it's shipping to and what shipping method they want to use, that's when your shopping cart software is going to call out to Accurate Tax and send that information to us. And we're going to come back and say, there's $5.42 of sales tax that needs to be collected here, or there's $8.97 in sales tax, whatever the amount is based on all of the various rules. We're going to give you that amount back. Your shopping cart, it'll put that into your shopping cart so the customer gets charged that amount, and that comes into your banking accounts. And you hang on to that until you're ready to pay the states when you do your filings. We also offer tax reports, and these are broken down by jurisdiction, like state or city or whatever the jurisdiction needs to be for different areas, and by date. So if you are doing your own sales tax returns, this information is invaluable in helping you determine what your sales were, what your taxable sales were, how much was collected, and how much you need to pay the states. We integrate with a lot of major shopping cart software, as well as order management systems where somebody might be taking an order over the phone or entering it manually somehow. And that's important because it's good to know that the software you're already using works with Accurate Tax. And we also support batch data import, which means if you're working with a legacy system or an unusual system that we don't integrate with currently, we can import orders in a spreadsheet format for you so that everything else for the filings and the taxes and everything happens, it's all collected into that one central area. This is really important if maybe you've got a website that does use Accurate Tax for calculations, but you also have a backend system that doesn't, and you need to merge those two sets of data in order to do your sales tax filings. So that's basically how the software works. And we also have a few services that go around it too. The first of these is Nexus Determination. We can help you figure out where you have a physical presence. Like I said, it's generally pretty easy, but there are some unusual rules, like if you do trade shows or have a drop ship affiliation with another company in different states, that can affect your physical nexus determination. But we also help you figure out where you have that economic nexus. So based on your previous year sales, have you exceeded the small seller exemption in one or more states? And if so, which states are those? We offer registration support. So if you're looking for help registering to collect sales tax in various states or registering with SST, then we do both of those as well. We do periodic sales tax filings, regardless of whether it's monthly or quarterly or whenever you do them. And remittance, which means paying the money that you've collected to the different states. So we do that through the SST system if you're an SST seller, but we do it directly with the states if you're not, or if you're working with a state that's not an SST state. So we do have the ability to do that for both sets of relationships, I would say. And then finally, we offer exemption certificate management. And if you're not familiar with this, I'll just quickly say that if you're in retail and you're selling things to somebody who is tax exempt, then that's where this comes into play. So perhaps you're selling to a school or a nonprofit who doesn't have to pay sales tax, or you're selling to someone who is really just going to mark it up and sell it again. They're not the actual final user. In those cases, the sale would be exempt, and you have to be able to prove that they've given you a valid exemption certificate, and we do all of that management as well. So in a gist, that's what you need to know when you are selling anything online. I do want to really point out that if you're selling digital products, this is really still something you need to consider. I used the term Wild West earlier to refer to the fact that the economic nexus laws are a little all over the map. The same is true for digital products. If you're selling digital products in certain states, you are going to be subject to sales tax. Connecticut is a great example. They have a lot of different rules around selling digital products and the taxability of those. So, whether it's an ebook or a course or anything like that, you really need to make sure that you're in compliance just as much as if you were selling bath salts or flower arrangements or something online. And I just want to say thank you to Amber and to entrepreneurs and bloggers in the spotlight. I followed Amber within her Pinterest group for a couple of years. I think she's great at what she does. So when she mentioned that she was bringing this group back to life, I jumped at the opportunity to participate. We're also giving away a $50 Amazon gift card. So please drop a comment on this Facebook post. Let us know what you thought of the presentation. Ask a question. Give us some feedback. Anything like that. If you leave a comment, you'll be in the running for the Amazon giveaway. And just in case you want to contact us, I wanted to give you all of that information. We're located in Viera, Florida, which is due east of Orlando, so straight over from Disney World, but just before you get to the beach. We're pretty close to the beach. We're a little bit south of the Space Center, so we get to watch the rockets go up, which is pretty cool. You can give us a call at 866-400-2444. Email us at sales@AccurateTax or hit us up on social media. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for your time. I know you have tons of things to do this afternoon, so I appreciate your taking a little bit of time to learn about sales tax compliance. And like I said, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you very much.